Franco, and I will be your conference host. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you as we officially open the first ever ITS Canada 2021 virtual conference. I know a lot of people have been starting to get Zoom fatigue, so we wanted to have a different sort of conference. One of the big changes you'll already have seen is that a lot of the presentations are in breakout rooms as collaborative sessions. You won't get a chance to see as many presentations, but I hope you'll have a chance to have a higher quality of discussions in smaller groups. Our core mission is bringing people together to have real conversations and real discussions, not just endless presentations. That being said, this is our first virtual conference, so I'm sure there will be some technical glitches. Please bear with us. Get ready to join us in a different and innovative virtual conference and help us to create connections that matter. This virtual conference is an exciting gathering for the transportation community to come together to discuss a broad range of topics that are becoming more and more interconnected. Throughout the next 2 days, we'll have an opportunity to explore how all of our particular areas of interests in transportation come together. This event is a special forum to attend your choice of 50+ presentations that are part of 8 innovation sessions, 40+ breakout sessions, smart mobility challenges, technical tours, award celebrations, and keynotes on the latest trends and developments in transportation. Over the last 3 months, the local organizing committee has invested countless hours and a lot of energy to put on this landmark virtual conference and exhibition. I know that the event has already started earlier with innovation sessions 1 and 2 and the award celebration, but if the numbers are alone are any indication, then it's already a success. In the upcoming 2 days, about 200 industry professionals will have graced the virtual attendee hub to meet, discuss, and learn from each other. Also critical to the virtual conference are our sponsors, who you will see recognized in a variety of ways throughout the conference. This afternoon, ITS Canada would like to thank Myovision, one of our platinum level sponsors and the sponsor of this opening plenary session, and Transport Canada Conference Programs sponsor. Thank you for your outstanding support. During the next 50 minutes or so, you'll hear from various keynote speakers, followed by Q&A. Please submit your questions in the Q&A panel in the pane, and don't forget to mark off who your question is addressed to. Now, to bring official words of welcome on behalf of ITS Canada, please join me in greeting Ian Steele, Chairperson and CEO. Ian is President and a professional electrical engineer with PBX Engineering. He is a project manager and senior design engineer on provincial and municipal projects. Throughout his career, Ian has been involved with all aspects of project delivery, ranging from project conception and planning to site assessments and infrastructure reviews to detailed design and procurement, right all the way through to infrastructure deployment and construction, testing, and commissioning services. Over his 20-year career as a professional, he has built many strong relationships. His exceptional communication skills have enabled him to effectively manage requirements and interests from multiple stakeholder groups and agencies, for which an astute understanding of context and a diplomatic approach are necessary in order to carefully navigate diverging interests. A warm welcome to Ian.
Thank you, Rachel. I think I need to trim that bio down a little bit. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first of ITS Canada's 2 virtual events this year. We're very excited about the program we put together. I think Rachel covered a number of the points. There are aspects that we've included. In the themes and the topic areas, we've included build on our new strategic plan vision of ITS Canada as the hub for transportation technologies in Canada. We've put a lot of focus into making this as engaging as possible with some unique and innovative approaches. But virtual certainly does not mean easier, and a very significant amount of planning and preparation has gone into this event. So we owe a huge thank you to Yannicka, Yates, Jeff Smart, Virginie for the graphics, Rachel, and the whole virtual event team for all the work they put into planning and preparation. Thank you for all of your time and efforts. I think we'd all agree that engagement and interaction have been two critical aspects of conferences that we have been sorely lacking and have probably missed over the last year and a half. They're very difficult to replicate in a virtual environment. So with this event, we've really strived to foster that engagement and interaction that we've all been missing. We have a shorter overall format to make it easier to fit into your schedule. We've spread the timing out over the day to accommodate different time zones. The interface has been laid out to make it straightforward to plan your attendance. There are smaller discussion-oriented breakout sessions that Rachel alluded to encourage interaction, and we've included a number of social events as well, of course. I know we're all busy, but I strongly encourage everyone to attend as many sessions as you can, because that engagement and interaction I spoke of really is driven by you, all of the attendees. Our presenters put a lot of work into preparing their presentations, and we encourage everyone to acknowledge their work by attending and being actively engaged in those sessions. In particular, these events simply would not be possible without the support from our sponsors and exhibitors. So this year we've paid particular attention to fostering that engagement for our exhibitors and sponsors. New this year is the Innovation Summits. We had one this morning that was well received and very well put together, and where they showcase unique solutions. And I very much encourage everyone to take advantage of our virtual exhibit hall floor times so that we have a chance to speak with our exhibitors and see what solutions they're capable of providing. You know, I know we'd all prefer to be on a real exhibit floor, filling our conference bags with pens and USB sticks and logoed beer cozies, but this is the next best thing. So it's really important that we all take the time to engage with our exhibitors to learn more about their experiences and what solutions they have to offer. As mentioned, this is the first of 2 events this year. Our next event is in November. This is a new platform for us, and we are not only open to, but are actively soliciting your feedback on how this event goes for you. There's a link to a survey on the event site, and we encourage everyone to take advantage of that. We look forward to hearing from you. So thank you to everyone. Your attendance and active participation are really what make all the difference. And on behalf of ITS Canada, enjoy the conference. So with that, it is my very great pleasure to introduce my colleague, Mr. Craig Hutton. As the Associate Assistant Deputy Minister of Policy for Transport Canada, Craig Hutton leads the development and coordination of modal and multimodal policy advice to support the efficiency, competitiveness, and environmental sustainability of Canada's national transportation system. Prior to assuming his current responsibilities, Craig served as Director General, Strategic Policy and Innovation at Transport Canada, where he was responsible for intergovernmental relations, cabinet affairs, and for policy development related to multimodal integration, technology innovation, Arctic transportation, and accessibility. He led the government's establishment and response to the statutory review of the Canada Transportation Act, and was subsequently responsible for developing and implementing the Minister of Transport's vision, Transportation 2030, a strategic plan for the future of transportation in Canada. Craig was appointed to the board of ITS Canada in 2015, serving as TC's representative, providing advice concerning technology trends and collaborating on initiatives of national interest. Craig holds a Master of Arts degree in Political Science from Western University and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from Carleton University. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you, Ian. Bonjour à tous, and thank you to ITS Canada for its excellent work organizing this year's virtual conference. It's a pleasure to be among Canada's ITS stakeholder community again, and practitioners, transport operators, researchers, multinationals, small and medium-sized enterprises and startups are all part of this really important ecosystem for Canada's transportation system. All of you bring important products, services, and expertise that contribute to Canada's transportation system in so many ways. Your work benefits jurisdictions and citizens across Canada in terms of a system that is safe, secure, innovative, and integrated. Your work also supports trade and economic growth and a cleaner environment. ITS Canada and its members are uniquely placed when it comes to the use of new transportation technologies and solutions. As a community, your insights and perspectives represent an important voice for governments. At Transport Canada, we see and hear this collective voice in ITS Canada's new 5-year strategic plan. This plan speaks to a long-term vision built around the ideas, capabilities, and aspirations of the ITS organization. I've been really impressed by the enthusiasm to develop and implement this strategic plan. This forward-looking plan sets a foundation for us all to better connect and collaborate around shared priorities, including focusing on the integration of new mobility models and services in ways that help address urban transportation challenges, promoting advanced technology applications for the freight sector that can increase the efficiency, reliability of supply chains, and better communicating the ITS story, not only as it relates to multimodal transportation, but also to broad-based enabling technologies such as data analytics and artificial intelligence. In fact, the launch of the ITS Canada's Maritime Multimodal Supply Chain Technical Committee is an example of how ITS is helping to reinforce the organization's commitment to being a leader in transportation technology. The work of this committee will have important links to freight and trade corridors, and Transport Canada is keen on supporting this effort. Il est clair que les nouvelles technologies transforment les transports et changent la façon dont les personnes et les marchandises se déplacent. At the same time, it's critical for governments at all levels to better understand the way in which we live with these new technologies in terms of leveraging their benefits, but also managing their potential economic and social risks. In several instances, technology has raised important policy questions around safety policy, public opinion, and business models. For example, how should regulators protect the public while encouraging innovation? How are private operators and suppliers building trust and acceptance? How best can industry, academia, and governments work together to get a better line of sight on the future of transportation and mobility? And how do we ensure factors such as equity, access, and accessibility are appropriately factored into the policy development and decision-making process? Ce n'est pas des questions faciles et les considérations politiques qui les entourent sont très variées, mais ce sont des questions qui préoccupent les gouvernements et les ministres. In this regard, Transport Canada has advanced policy work in collaboration with our provincial and territorial counterparts. Under the Council of Ministers for Transportation and Highway Safety, we've been actively involved in FPT efforts around connected and automated vehicles, remotely piloted aircraft systems, urban mobility, and trade corridors. This work provides transportation ministries across all jurisdictions in Canada with opportunities to more fully consider technologies through a holistic lens that integrates transportation issues within the larger public policy context. The reports from these initiatives are publicly available on the Council of Transport Ministers website, and what's important to take away from them today is the extent to which issues of innovation and technology are prevalent in this work. For example, the work of the FPT Urban Mobility Task Force included addressing the disruptive effects and potential benefits of advanced technologies and evaluating if and how they can be leveraged in addressing urban transportation issues, as well as finding new ways to work across policy and geographical barriers through integration and interoperability of transportation systems. It is these horizontal policy issues where the voice of ITS Canada and its members is needed to better inform the work of governments at all levels. The ITS Canada strategic plan and conferences such as this one go a long way to foster these connections across industry, academia, governments, and the general public. This is why Transport Canada is pleased to be a program sponsor for this year's virtual conference. In closing, I'd like to thank Ian and Yannicka and my fellow ITS Canada board members for the ongoing engagement and collaboration with Transport Canada. I want to thank you for all your time today, and I wish all of you a productive conference. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Craig. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Curtis Mcbride, CEO of Myovision. Understanding traffic is fundamental to managing the evolution of our cities, but when Curtis Mcbride looked at how cities were measuring traffic, he saw methods that hadn't changed in decades. People with clipboards counting cars. He co-founded Myovision in 2005, a fast-growing Kitchener-based company using computer vision, artificial intelligence, and advanced modeling to help cities modernize their approach to managing traffic to make roads more efficient and safer. Curtis is a graduate of the University of Waterloo, where he received his Bachelor's of Engineering and Systems Design in 2004 and Master of Engineering and Systems Design in 2007. Welcome, Curtis.
Thanks, Ian. I'm going to talk about something, I guess, a little bit different than I would normally talk about at a traffic conference this time around, but I felt maybe like sharing some of our experiences with remote work over the last year and a half might be useful for the audience. We had a really interesting 2020. So we started the year January 13th. We closed a financing transaction with Telus Ventures. I think Telus is going to speak next. $120 million equity investment to really try to advance some of the urban mobility platform technology work that we've been working on leading up to that point. We so started the year really excited about that partnership and what the investment was going to mean for us. I had been working on that deal for about a year and decided I needed a break. So my brother and I strapped backpacks on and we flew to Flagstaff and went into the Grand Canyon for a week, and I figured getting into the deepest hole in the earth was as far away from email and phone calls as I could get. And I remember coming out of that, out of the Grand Canyon, getting back to the airport, turning my phone on and reading about this what at the time everyone thought was a flu virus that was impacting Wuhan. And I remember thinking, like, man, that really must suck for them. And then sure enough, 6 weeks later, we were shutting the office down as the pandemic that became what we've all lived through kicked off. And I just sort of reflecting on it, I feel like we have about 260 people working for us right now, and it's been a journey watching people go through the various almost like chapters, the psychological chapters that this has entailed. Phase one was this feeling of we're all in this together. We're gonna it's gonna be a few months. We're gonna do what needs to get done, and we're gonna beat this thing back. And there was like there was hope and optimism. And some sense of like team camaraderie that in that initial phase. And then I watched as it was clear that the pandemic was not going to end in a couple of months. As the summer approached and we'd all been in lockdown for 3 or 4 months at that point, we started to see like a lot of fatigue in the team, like a lot of people had were home with kids. My employee population, I guess the demographic of the employee population means that there's tons of young kids at home, lots of new babies involved. So we're asking people to be on doing their job, but also on as parents and all the stress that came along with that the part of the pandemic. So we gave people Fridays off during the summer, thinking like, okay, let's try to like throttle back a little bit and give people an opportunity to focus on their families and on their own mental health and whatnot, because clearly on the other side of summer, that's when we're going to be out of this thing, and we just got to give people some reprieve to get there. And then we had that brief moment where things started to open up, and there was this sort of sense of cautious optimism coming out of into the fall, followed by the what became the longest part of this lockdown in Canada, when in December leading up to Christmas, we decided to go into a hard lockdown again. And I feel like that phase, that sort of like December to now, really, that phase has been where we've seen the hardest impact on the team, just like psychologically. Companies got to keep moving forward. The world's moving forward. We kind of have no choice. There's lots of change happening out in the world that I'm sure you guys are all experiencing too. Business models are changing. For our business, the price of silicon's going up, just like the price of wood's going up. Talent mobility has become a real thing. Like you can get a job. Used to be, you could get a job in a driving distance, but you can now get a job virtually anywhere in the world. And so, talent mobility has become a thing. And so we're sort of dealing with all of the change. And the thing that I'm really excited about is like with the acceleration of second dose vaccines, the early suggestions that reopening is coming. We're starting to see, for the first time, I would say, since this all happened, like we're starting to see the employee population exhibit signs of not just hope, but of a hope that like it's a sustainable kind of hope, right? That actually that the light, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're coming out the other side of it. So that's been sort of the psychology part of work from home for us. The other thing I wanted to just share a little bit is kind of lessons that we've learned from it, because as much as it's no one's gonna have wished a pandemic on the world, but there's always silver lining in anything. And I remember reading an article early on in the pandemic that talked about how pandemics are portals, and through human history, they often denote opportunity to accelerate positive trends that have changed, going back to the fall of Roman Empire, which was kind of like the last sort of accelerated fall of Roman Empire was geared around a pandemic. And then obviously as early as 1918, right? Things that and so the article talked a lot about sort of taking stock of what you want to bring through to the other side of the portal and what you want to leave behind. And so I just wanted to sort of reflect on some of that for us. And I've always taken the view that co-location is critical, right? Like innovation happens in an office. You need to be on a whiteboard. You need to be close together. You need those sort of water cooler collisions. And I'll talk a little bit about how I still think that's true, but I also think that you can do a lot of stuff remotely that we never really, I don't think we've ever really fully appreciated. With the right digital tools, the right process changes, you can do a lot of things remotely. We've had 100 people start at Myovision since the pandemic started who have never been in the office before. So don't have like a shared sense of the in-space culture. We've had to recreate a lot of that stuff with them, and it's clearly possible because we've made it work. We have those people on the team being productive. So I think that's one thing that, while we are excited to get back to the office, a flexible hybrid remote work model, I think, is going to always be part of our culture now going forward. The other big one is acceleration of digital trends. Last speaker talked about changes to business model. Like, my customers, I had a customer tell me this recently, that the idea of managing intersections from their living room never really resonated for them as part of our product value propositions in the past. But having lived through the last year and a half, all of a sudden managing intersections from your living room is actually almost like a primary primary requirement of infrastructure going forward, at least in this individual's mind. And so I think acceleration of digital, we're seeing it in our consumer lives, but I think it's also starting to happen in how we think about public infrastructure, connectivity, data, analytics, insights. So that's been good for us, because it's accelerated a trend that we already thought was coming. And then, the last one is just like collaboration. I think you never get away from, we've not been able to recreate the whiteboard digitally. Like, we've tried, some things come close, but that flow you get sitting down with people and collaborating. And so while I think remote work is here to stay, I think there will always be a need for those interpersonal connections. And I think it's made me appreciate, whether it's a whiteboard or just events like this, right? Like, it's not the same as being able to walk the trade show floor, being able to interact with customers directly, go to sessions. And I think it'll make us appreciate trade shows. It'll make us appreciate going to the movies, make us appreciate going to dinner with our families in ways that I think we maybe took for granted before. So just some thoughts I wanted to share, and hopefully it was useful insight. And I think our friends from James Levy and Julio Villalta are going to be up next to share some of their perspectives. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today.
Excellent. Thank you, Curtis. Let me just bring up the, I'm going to share here. Just 1 second. All right.
Hey, thanks, Curtis. And it was great to see you again. Julio, if you flip to the next page. Yeah, I'd like to introduce myself. So James Levy, and I'm responsible for Telus's 5G strategy and execution. And my colleague, Julio Villalta, who leads our intelligent mobility practice, would like to share with you a vision for 5G and how it's going to impact mobility. It's interesting to reflect on the transformative power of mobile networks and how they've changed the way we work and live. 2G brought us text messaging, and with it, an always-on culture. 3G brought us the internet and got us glued to our screens, changing social dynamics. 4G brought us social media and the sharing economy. The smartphone has become central to every interaction, digital or otherwise. The device has earned a place in every pocket, at every dinner table, and even cars have adapted to its presence, with USB plugs, wireless charging, and CarPlay standard on all new vehicles. If you go to the next slide, please, Julio. So I ask myself, what can we bring to customers in particular and society in general with a network that's 10 times faster, 5 times more responsive, supports 1 million IoT devices per square kilometer, and is ultra reliable? It means we can bring amazing solutions to our communities. We can reduce greenhouse gases with smart traffic systems that leverage video analytics And we can enable electric and autonomous transit systems. These solutions cut to the heart of what makes cities smarter. We can bring drone technologies, soil sensors, and connectivity to farms to help make food supplies safer and more secure. And we can enable remote diagnostics and virtual care to make healthcare more accessible. And in the future, we can even enable cars to drive themselves. Next slide, please, Julio. 5G will enable two broad categories of products: 4G solutions made better with 5G, such as gaming, and solutions that are unique to 5G, such as mission-critical applications. This transformation of solutions will be accomplished through the rollout of a new ecosystem of technologies. Bringing 5G to market requires new radio spectrum, innovative industry standards, and emerging radio capabilities. Along with those, complementary technologies like mobile edge computing, video analytics, and artificial intelligence will also emerge. And finally, we'll see the introduction of innovative and new classes of devices, including augmented reality glasses and non-line of sight drones. Leveraging these technologies, we can bring to not only our imagination, but actually bring solutions to market within the next couple of years. We've been developing product roadmaps alongside customers through a focus on industry verticals. In agriculture, we're working with a leading cloud provider to bring field imaging technologies to farms, improving water usage and reducing fertilizers to make farming more sustainable. In finance, we've tabled solutions with banks that leverage speed to video-enable private banking, which is now critical in a COVID world. In healthcare, we're working with a diagnostics provider to explore developments in mobile MRI machines and CT scanners that can be transported on ambulances to push critical care into communities. And in municipalities, we're deploying mission-critical communications that can video-enable a 911 call and share that situational information with first responders that are preparing to triage a multi-vehicle collision. For consumers, we're developing partnerships to bring new types of content like mobile gaming, multiple viewer angle sporting events, and augmented reality to market. Next slide, Julio, please. But as we advance these solutions, there's a grave concern that our rural citizens will be left behind. In cities, internet usage will continue its exponential growth, doubling over the next 3 years. But with prohibitive economics, rural communities have historically been ignored. That will change over the next couple of years. 5G has the potential to close the rural digital divide, bringing with it affordable high-speed internet. When we think of high-speed internet, our minds go to fiber. Now 5G is a new option. With massive MIMO technology, 5G networks can focus radio signals like lasers and beam those signals directly to households. This is important because it enables incredible efficiencies in how mobile networks use spectrum and makes it possible to offer high-speed internet at scale. Over the next 5 years, Telus will roll out wireless high-speed internet to 250,000 households and 20,000 farms. We will also connect almost 400 First Nation communities. This 5G investment will enable speeds of up to 100 megabits per second, doubling the CRTC mandate of 50 meg for rural broadband, and support solutions like TV and home security. 5G will transform rural communities. We will connect schools, employees, and patients, making virtual education, virtual work, and virtual healthcare available to all Canadian communities. And in a COVID world, these solutions have become critical. We'd now like to talk a little bit about how some of these technologies will impact transportation. I'd like to introduce Julio now, as I said, our industry mobility practice lead. Take it away, Julio.
Thank you, James. Yes, so before we get into the specific, I'll call it use cases that 5G will enable, I thought let's take some time here to review some of the economic and social benefits that 5G will enable. from a technology perspective. So, for these things here, obviously, you'll see these dimensions are not necessarily new in concept, but 5G will definitely accelerate and drive further increase in revenue, productivity, savings, and security and safety. So when you talk about in revenues as an example, 5G has the potential to accelerate and create new use cases that we have not yet thought about or seen. These use cases will lead to new services and new product offerings that have the potential to generate new revenue and increase customer reach. And you know what? I'm not going to go into autonomous vehicles too much today because I'm sure you're going to have a lot of these workout sessions that are going to talk about autonomous vehicles and transportation systems. But everybody's heard about them, the use cases around autonomous cars, whether they're on the road, tractors in the field, or drones in the skies. These technologies all require consistent, reliable, and fast connectivity to process a tremendous amount of data and information that these technologies are enabling, whether they're on the edge or in the cloud. But and you need the amount of data to process to make really critical and precision mission critical decisions, not just for the optimization of the work and generate efficiencies and optimizations in the workplace, but it's really around public safety as well. So at the end of the day, when you combine these new technologies with 5G and these use cases, you're going to see, at least in the autonomous vehicle space, you're going to see new use cases come around, delivery of goods as an example, delivery of mail, delivery of medication or life-saving intervention, with defibrillators being dropped out of the sky for emergency 911s. 5G will enable all this. So, James has talked about it previously here, but and talk about in terms of telepresence, and Curtis alluded to earlier in our call today about how the future of work is changing, and now we're working more remotely from our either from a different satellite office or we're working directly from our home or our community center. When we talk about that, remote healthcare and educational organizations will be able to reach further into these communities and provide further services outside of the traditional brick and mortar locations. These new services or experiences will allow you to not only new goods or services, potentially for a premium, but will enable you to offer it in the very least or most cost-effective manner. So, and that's outside of what I call the other social benefits of having, patients recover outside of the hospital setting or students leaving, towards a CMA for their educational needs. The talent is now able to be retained in these rural communities. Moving on to productivity, and I won't spend too much time here, but with the advent of 5G and the amount of increased connectivity or amount of connections or sensors and deployable in the field, you're going to be able to start putting these sensors to work for you. So we talk about specifically faster throughput and specifically the amount of information coming into the individual in a connected worker situation. So we talked about augmented reality or virtual reality use cases. Imagine a field worker, whether they're on the farm or they're in the oil field or on a construction site. You may not necessarily have the complete experience, or a new worker come in with the 15, 20 years experiences to be able to diagnose the situation right there on the spot. But someone would be able to, with augmented reality, be able to get the assistance remote. And 5G will enable that and transform that experience such that you'll be able to provide and stream, high definition video, augment the reality on the fly, near real time, such that the individual in the work field will be able to perform their task in an accurate and dependable manner. At the end of the day, 5G is going to enable use cases just like that, which are going to enable further productivity either in a manufacturing plant, in the work field, or on the farm. Operational savings, we talk about this all the time today in the 4G world, and 5G is just going to accelerate even more. With more and more connections, what is going to end up happening is you'll be able to take a lot more readings from multiple devices. We talk about millions of devices in the field. As the cost of these devices go down, you'll be able to deploy these sensors much more economically and for fiscal, financially sense. So when you talk about sensors in the field, let's just talk about intelligent transportation systems. Imagine, road sensors, specifically every couple of yards or meters in a corridor to tell you or identify specifically icy or slippery conditions. This in turn can, inform the municipality or the public sector, public works, to deploy a snow vehicle and actually lay down salt or be preemptive in terms of maintaining and ensuring maintenance standards for that road itself. the more sensors you have in the field, the more data it needs to process, the more it needs to go into the cloud and get processed for faster decision-making decisions. And then from a safety and security, obviously, you know, with the advent of video analytics and it becoming much more foundational, I'll say, in public safety, you know, we talk about CCTV cameras, but, you know, it's just not about that. It's about, you know, understanding the environment, either, you know, in the infrared, or are we talking in real time, specifically, you know, you're looking at traffic patterns, whether that's mobility, specifically the movement of the goods from one facility to the other, could be pedestrian traffic, could be vehicular traffic. At the end of the day, video analytics is here to stay, and machine learning is going to adapt such that you're going to need more information to be processed in the cloud. And, you know, with the advent of 5G, now you'll be able to do that. And, you know, when you consider V2V, vehicle to vehicular, vehicle to infrastructure connectivity, specifically where all these, I'll call it intelligent devices are talking to one another, it'll be crucial in making sure that this information is being broadcasted and distributed amongst all the peers, such that each individual can actually make a, you know, a key informative decision and be proactive in the safety of, you know, whether that's a pedestrian, again, or a motorist at the end of the day. So with that said, what I'd like to do is just take one moment here and take a pause. And for those that are participating in today's session, we do have a quick poll that we want to bring up on the screen here. And I'll have my colleague here, Chris, at the moment, actually, if he could just paste that in the chat. And if not, what we'll do is we'll have the link sent out momentarily, and what we'll do is we'll continue with the presentation. Anybody able to see that? If not, give me one moment. I'm going to paste the link here for you. All right, here it goes. I'm pasting in the chat window. All right, if everybody can see that, that's great. In the meantime, we'll continue with the presentation, and if anybody has any questions, we'll waive them to the end, and we'll take a look at the results of the poll at the end of the presentation here. So with that said, if we continue down our you know, our discussion here and specifically get into the use cases, when we think about you know, rural communities and specifically, you know, outside of the CMA, we know that rural communities are the front lines of our, you know, Canadian resource sector. And adoption of technologies such as, you know, IoT sensors, machine-judged computing, video analytics will help keep local businesses competitive on the world stage. And, you know, due to, you know, 5G's low latency capabilities and ability to sustain more connections at a time, deployment of these technologies will be simpler. For example, in agriculture, 5G will enable us to sustain a swarm of AI-controlled autonomous drones for, you know, for planting, reforestation use cases, precision farming, or autonomous tractors and farm equipment. Some may think that autonomous drone vehicles, you know, are relegated only to urban centers, as an example. But, you know, in the rural setting, these are the front lines for these technologies. And the reason for that is because these are and can be predictable controlled environments that can lead to safe and predictable outcomes. Autonomous tractors or drones over an open field, you know, forests are prime use cases for these technologies, not to mention heavy equipment at a mining site. Same goes with public transportation. Although automated transit systems seem like a distant future, we are starting to see them deployed on tourist routes where passengers can hop on and hop off. And you'll see some of the large public parks out down, you know, south of the border are starting to put them into place. But with the advent of electronic vehicles and buses just around the corner, and accounting for what I call supply issues today, and we're going to see that, you know, open up in the next couple of years, we'll see a proliferation of these where total cost of ownership declines, profitability of the route can go up, and, you know, combined with 5G low latency, drive autonomous to the next level where real-time vehicle to vehicular communication is not just between vehicles, but public infrastructure, i.e. traffic intersections and external data systems, such that we can make real-time decisions and become much more safer in deployment of these technologies. One other area that talk about today is about video analytics, and specifically, you know, how that is combining with machine learning to drive additional use cases that are, you know, are advancing by the day to day. You know, when we all think about video analytics, we think, you know, traditionally about, you know, closed caption television. security, making sure people are safe, and we were talking about venues, making sure people are coming in and out and are not necessarily doing something that they're not supposed to, right? But video analytics is much more beyond that. It's about actually not just the people, but it's also about the value, the asset itself, tracking the mobility of the asset, the people, the vehicle, and the use case. So let's talk about more for a second. Analytics specifically. We talk about in the sense of it's a busy intersections, right? Now we have Curtis here from Myovision on the call today. Myovision is great in driving what I call video analytics at the intersection, understanding traffic patterns and specifically the mobility of pedestrians and people for high use corridors. That is one particular use case that allows us to dynamically detect dangerous situations. But with the advent of 5G, we're able to take that and accelerate it even further, able to take that information from multiple video camera feeds, bring it into the cloud, process it in near real time, and make, I'll call it, decisive critical decisions, either specifically at the intersection, so from a timing or sequence perspective, so you can dynamically modify and change traffic flows, or when we're talking about vehicles to vehicles, you're now able to inform the vehicles in a geographic region because you have that intersection or that infrastructure in place, broadcast and say, what, two intersections down the road or 3 miles down the road, we know where there's going to be congestion or there's a traffic accident, we need now to reroute. And this is only possible with actually processing the information at the cloud. And as a result, with 5G, you'll be able to do that, and not only just with just the one video feed, but multiple video feeds, and do that concisely in combination with machine edge computing. So there is tremendous opportunity here with the technologies, not with 5G just alone, but 5G specifically with machine edge computing and video analytics that will help drive the use cases significantly much forward. So with that said, what I'll do is now I'm going to flip back here for a moment and go back to our poll. And I'd just like to see if everybody's had an opportunity to fill out. And if you haven't, that's fine too. But for today's perspective, we have 21 votes. And just to see what the importance is here. So the majority of today's participants are looking for safety and security as the primary use case, and specifically and how 5G would be able to support that. And then followed by, I'm just going to see here for a moment, an increase in productivity. That is quite interesting, actually, to say the least. From a return on investment perspective, we've seen here that productivity is usually the main driving force, but safety and security in a public transportation setting, it seems like it's obviously the winner here. Otherwise than that, and these results will be available to everyone. We're not going to take this down anytime soon, but from a participant perspective, you can see here the geographic distribution. So we got a few across the country as well south of the border here. So I like to thank everybody for participating in the poll today and actually having, giving us some time here to participate and provide you some insights into 5G and how it'll be transformative for the use cases. But for now, I'll pass it over to James to conclude here and kick off our question and answer period. Over to you, James.
Hey, thanks, Julio. It's important to realize that 5G is a journey and not a destination, with successive waves of capability, from enhanced mobile broadband to ultra-reliable low-latency networks. Over the coming years, Telus will invest heavily in bringing 5G capabilities and coverage through its promise of delivering better outcomes for Canadians while lifting the Canadian economy with job creation and GDP output through the innovations we'll enable for our customers. On behalf of Julio and myself, thank you for the opportunity to share our 5G vision with you today. We'll be happy to take your questions now.
If anyone has any questions, please just type them in the chat box and we'll be able to field them from there. Well, I'll start it off. James, you had mentioned bringing that 5G to about 250,000 places in Canada. Is there a specific place that will happen first?
Yeah, this is rural communities. So initially with a focus in Alberta, and then expanding across more of Western Canada and into Eastern Quebec.
Great. Okay, Just waiting on any questions. Still no questions yet. Wow, that was a very succinct presentation, I guess. All questions have been pre-answered. We'll just give it another moment. Just wait. If anyone also has questions for Curtis from Myovision, you could also type them in the Q&A as well there. That was a very great presentation. It's for me, it's just amazing how far the technology has come in such a short period of time. In your line of work, I'm sure you've seen, right? You've done this for so many years. Can you talk a little bit about how far that technology has come just in the past 10 or 15 years?
Julio, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the technology has been changing consistently. I'll say here, even my short tenure here at Telus for over the last 4 years, I've seen significant, I'll call it advances or evolution of technology. So one area that I primarily focus, and I'll leave it with this as a kind of an example, but in the transportation business, specifically what I call in the fleet operations or fleet telematics space, we've seen that over the last 10 to 15 years. We've gone through about 4 evolutionary cycles. And just a case in point, we first started with the basic track and trace, where the GPS, let's understand where my vehicle is, at any given point in time. And that led way into what I call engine diagnostic information coming off the vehicle. Now let's gather more data to understand how the vehicle is performing so that I can do predictive maintenance and get further return on investment. That led what I call into the next evolution, which is the driver behavior aspect. Is about making sure that we are not only keeping our drivers safe, but the people on the road safe. So ensuring that they're not I'll call it lane drifting or distracted driving. And now what we're starting to see is we're going into what I call the 4th evolution of this space, which is about video telematics, and specifically how can we start interfacing, understanding things dynamically. So no longer leveraging necessary technologies where static information as speed limits as an example. But as you're driving through a construction zone, how can you identify that it's gone from 100 down to 80 or from a 60 down to a 40? Video analytics is actually driving that forward, and you're going to see that more and more use cases are going to start driving that. So video analytics is no longer just going to be what I call just for necessarily safety in that regard, but it's also going to be informing us and making decisions on our behalf where we might be impaired. So with obviously with the changes in cannabis legislation as an example, this is one area of concern for a lot of fleet operators, is how do they make sure that their drivers are not impaired during driving. So video analytics is going to play a part in that, and it's going to help drive what I call use cases where it's making sure that the vehicle's on the road, but for those that are impaired, the vehicle takes over and control such that it reduces the speed or it reduces the harsh acceleration, so that way you can drive further efficiency and further safety. So that's just one example, but that can be applied across the board in all technologies.
Thank you, Julio. Okay, a question for James and Julio. How important is cross-border implementation of 5G approaches, spectrum use, interoperability around various 5G-enabled applications in various sectors, for example, automotive?
Sure, I'll take that. And thanks for your question, Neil. At its most basic level, we'll see roaming, right? So, just 5G devices crossing the borders as they do today with things like enhanced mobile broadband. But when we start to talk about automotive, there's complementary technologies that are really key to enabling those use cases. For example, mobile edge computing and what's referred to as a network slice, or a virtualized capability that enables really low latency or responsive network communications. In order to do this, operators will have to find new and more innovative ways to merge their technologies to support applications like cross-border usage. We've been working with Verizon out of the US specifically on some automotive use cases to enable cross-border, and right now with a focus on the tunnel between Windsor and Detroit. So that's just some of the stuff that'll be coming down the pipe on this.
Great, thanks so much, James. Another question for you. What would be Telus's business model when it comes to autonomous vehicles?
This is probably one of the most fascinating questions, and I'll let Julio top up on this. But the reason I find this so fascinating is because there's a lot of different stakeholders that are required to actually enable this use case. There's municipalities and provincial transportation departments that'll have to think about how to deploy roadside technology to enable autonomous vehicles to transit their laneways. Automotive companies will be thinking about different ways to add value to their cars, including, not only infotainment applications, but also telematics. And operators like ourselves will have to deploy the mobile technology to actually enable these use cases. I think it's still pretty early days in terms of, who's going to invest and who's going to benefit from the transformation to autonomous transit. But it's something that's very top of mind for us as we start to think about the future of 5G. And do you want to top up, Julio?
Yeah, sure. It is. So I have to agree with James on this, that it is fascinating and what I'll also say is very, very challenging in a nascent environment. So when we talk about that intelligent mobility and specifically, connected vehicles as an example, it is really a partnership between public sector and private sector as well as government to understand specifically how we're going to deploy this and make it in what I call in a safe manner, but also specifically get the desired social outcomes that we're looking for. So we talk about sustainability, that's one aspect. And Craig, I think, talked about privacy and security, I think, earlier in the call as well. We, in what we call very early stages environment, we are looking for, and currently investigating in terms of, partnerships specifically around this space and truly understanding specifically where the sector is going when we talk about electronic vehicles and, the infrastructure needed for this deployment of that infrastructure. So James said, not just only making sure that we have the infrastructure to talk to the vehicle, but it's also making sure that the vehicles are on the road and are able to sustain. So in an EV world, making sure that we have connected charging stations as an example in the desired locations that we need. And then, not just about that, but it's also the management and maintenance of those charging stations or the infrastructure. Who's going to manage all that? It's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I think working collaboratively in a couple of these type of forums, and ITS is just one example of where we have an opportunity to bring these topics to mind. But Telus is, wants to be at the forefront of this deployment and this technology. And connected vehicles is definitely part of the strategy for Telus. It's just at this point, I think it's a little too early to say where it's going to go, but we definitely know the future is there and it's definitely going to be friendly.
Very good. We have time for one more quick question. Now that 5G is pushing into rural and we've combined that with remote work, do you think, in your opinion, more people will feel more comfortable staying on the farm?
I don't, James, do you have an answer? I can go and try this one. I like my personal opinion on this one is that, I think there's always going to be unique challenges that a rural community, has to face. And I think part of the challenge is about retaining talent and, some of the demographic shifts that I know that a lot of these communities are having challenges with. I think with the advent of 5G, the proliferation of IoT sensors as an example, and machine edge computing, specifically at the edge, what that means is that there's going to be an expertise or skill set that is going to be required that's more technological perhaps than it is today. And as a result, you're not going to be able to rely on having to ship your equipment down to a CMA to get its source or, service as an example. You're going to need people in the community to be able to support. And that means that you're going to need a skill set and experience to drive it. So with the future of work and where it is today, and, Curtis specifically spoke about it, some of the challenges and everybody's going to have, has adjusted to some degree with telepresence. With the advent of, the faster, stronger connections, reliable connections specifically to rural communities, education is going to be a key factor. And with that and the technology proliferation, I think there is going to be a willingness to stay in the community and actually bring what I call those high skilled jobs back out to our front line. And I think that's what's going to be very successful in the future. Again, it's very early to see. I mean, COVID did have an impact on everybody, but we're anticipating that the changes that we're seeing today are here to stay in one form or another. And we just need to see these challenges that we've had recently as opportunities to drive our agendas forward. And I think this is critical for us with 5G, IoT, machine edge computing, and telepresence. James, I don't know if you would like to top up.
Yeah, maybe to top up. I mean, one of the things we started to see in COVID was the depopulation of metropolitan areas and pretty significant real estate price spikes in communities that are a lot further afield from these major urban centers. And I think that's made possible by different types of technologies for distance learning, remote work, virtual healthcare. These technologies all really started to become mainstream over a very short period of time. If you think about, COVID being an 18-month journey, but significant portions of the population having to start to work remotely or to be schooled from home. These technologies are here to stay, and I think we'll really start to see rural communities survive as a result of these sorts of things. And just on a personal note, I have a cousin who works a farm, but also works an engineering job where he's focused on urban planning, civil engineering type stuff, and he's able to do that virtually from his combine. So I think the kinds of technologies we're bringing to bear, are pretty exciting in terms of what they can do to preserve rural life.
Absolutely. Times are definitely changing. Thank you so much, James. Thank you, Julio. And thank you, Curtis. So that concludes our keynote session. During the duration of this conference, please take time to visit the virtual exhibition. Check the app or the attendee hub for opening hours over the next 2 days. And join all exhibitors this evening for the exhibitor social hour. Everyone is welcome. And don't forget to bring your white envelope, which was included in your delegate bag. Our first Smart Mobility Challenge starts in a few minutes. If you haven't already done so, please view and download the conference app. It gives you complete and up-to-date details on locations, presenters, or other information about the innovation sessions and other activities. Finally, if you're a social media user, post your conference insights or experiences as they happen using the conference hashtag ITSC 2021. Thank you so much and have a great